I will show wonders in heaven above, and signs in the earth beneath, blood and fire and vapor of smoke. The sun shall be turned into darkness, and the moon into blood, before the coming of the great and awesome day of the Lord. And it shall come to pass that whoever calls on the name of the Lord shall be saved. Acts 2:21. And through signs, science, and symbols, the Lord has prepared us for the end that is soon about to come.
A quart of wheat for a denarius, and 3 quarts of barley for a denarius, and do not damage the oil and the wine. Revelation 6:6. The oil first came from the olive tree and was used to keep the lamps lit, but man has decided to damage the oil. For the end times were put into motion over a century ago, when a different type of oil became a major means of influencing the world's currency. And the angel of God instructed us not to damage the oil. For the Greek word for damage is adakeo, which means to act wickedly. And man has acted wickedly with this oil. For the world powers have manipulated oil in order to control the world's economy. And in the world's economy, what is the major currency? It is the US dollar, which accounts for 2/3 of all the world exchange reserves. More than 80% of all foreign exchange transactions and over 50% of all world imports are exchanged in US dollars. And the 3 key events that have put this into effect are: first, in July 1944, at the completion of World War II, the Bretton Woods system of monetary management was established, which made the US dollar the gold standard. Because the US controlled 2/3 of the world's gold reserves and was the major military hegemonic power following World War II, the 44 Allied nations agreed that their currency would be pegged to the US dollar. The US dollar would be insured by their gold reserves. In other words, the nations could exchange their US dollars for gold. Secondly, on August 15, 1971, under President Richard Nixon, the U.S. unilaterally terminated the convertibility of the U.S. dollar to gold, which effectively ended the U.S. gold standard monetary system and converted the U.S. dollar into a fiat currency. Fiat currency, by definition, is a monetary system which has no tangible backing of its fiscal value. In other words, the only factor upholding its value is confidence in the currency. Finally, to keep the US dollar from collapsing, Nixon negotiated a deal with Saudi Arabia that in exchange for arms and military protection, they would denominate all future oil sales in US dollars. Following this agreement, other OPEC countries agreed to do the same. Hence, the US dollar assumed a new oil standard, which is now known as the Petro Dollar system. Because the world exchange currency essentially remains in US dollars, our government and nation can produce paper currency and receive imports at almost no cost. Our US dollar has very little equitable financial backing, except for the fact that it is the currency by which most foreign trade is conducted. This is reflected in the fact that the value of our imports greatly exceeds the value of our exports. In fact, the economic value of our imports was 30% greater than our exports. However, in January of 1999, the euro was introduced into the reserve currency in order to compete against the US dollar. and a major means of allowing other countries to compete against the US dollar, was to convert their exchange currency from oil from US dollars to euros. And in November 2000, Saddam Hussein decided to attack the US economy in retaliation for Desert Storm by converting Iraq's oil exchange into euros. This caused a significant decrease in the US dollar exchange rate, and OPEC was threatening to follow suit. Because we could not control a regime like Iraq economically with oil, our government decided to use the alternative means to control them, with the wine which is their blood. Oil is required for almost every aspect of our economic and military power. It is required for transportation, heating, agriculture, medications, machinery, and synthetic manufacturing. Moreover, oil use has skyrocketed over the past century because of our gas-guzzling automobiles, neglect of public transportation, dispersed suburban housing patterns, and excessive consumption of oil products. At present, the world is consuming 100 million barrels of oil daily. The U.S. is presently the #1 consumer and importer of oil at a consumption rate of about 20 million barrels daily. Each U.S. citizen consumes about 1 barrel of oil every 2 weeks. Due to the poverty of the Middle East region, foreign oil has always been much cheaper to produce and transport than domestic oil, thus giving the oil companies a huge profit margin and the incentive to obtain oil overseas rather than domestically. Thus, of principal concern to the oil companies is maintaining the security and stability of the Middle East region. This has often entailed using covert and blatantly militaristic schemes to ensure control of certain countries, namely Iraq, Iran, Afghanistan, and Kuwait. Clearly, the U.S. hopes to control world oil trade and force opposing nations to purchase oil in U.S. dollars rather than euros, and thus force nations to hold hundreds of billions of U.S. dollars in reserve for future transactions. For as the angel of God had forewarned us, do not damage the oil. But because Babylon the Great has fornicated with the oil, she shall be burned with her oil in the fire. For as it says at the end, Fallen, fallen is Babylon the Great, she who has made all the nations drink of the wine of the passion of her immorality. Revelation 14:8.